Hello, welcome to lesson 9 of Financial Sobriety School. Today, I'm going to teach you about one of the foundations of Financial Sobriety School, which is your financial sobriety tools. So, I love the idea of thinking about having a toolkit because tools are so important in any sort of recovery or sobriety that we're doing over anything. And I know within myself, reaching within my toolbox is something that I do every single day. So, of course, there is going to be some tools that I am going to recommend that you use for your financial sobriety and to help ground you in your financial sobriety and to be able to really connect to your money and to be able to start to feel more grounded, start to feel more excited, start to feel like this is a part of you and the work that you're doing instead of something kind of happening outside of yourself that you're like, I don't know what that is, and I don't really want to know what that is. You're listening to this or watching this because you actually do want to know. And I'm really excited for you about that. So, when it comes to our financial sobriety tools, what's the one thing that you can think of right now that you could say, hey, I can start to do this and it will help support me and my money? What is one thing? I know myself, mindfulness helps a ton with my money. That's one of those things that I reach for a lot within my toolbox. Um, it's mindfulness. I think about obviously tracking my spending. I think about what tools do I have in regards to my credit cards that I actually don't really use my credit cards, or tools to, make sure that you are, if you do use your credit cards, if you don't have, a spending addiction so strong that it's dangerous to have a credit card because that is real. I know myself, I've just finally started to introduce credit cards a little bit back into my spending. And it's been interesting. And it's been interesting how quickly you can lose track of what that balance is, right? So, what's a tool, or something you can do? A tool is exactly that, something that you can do with your credit card if you find that all of a sudden your balance is creeping up again. Can it be something that you can actually like lock your card on a lot of the apps these days, like for your credit cards or within your online banking, which I love. It's like actually no transactions are authorized to go through this account anymore. I love the literal freezing of cards. I've done that a couple times in my financial sobriety, and it has served me very well. But really building, habits. What are some money habits that can be good for you? I talked about, I think in a previous lesson, my love for Mel Robbins. I'm going to bring her up again. I think I did last week too, but she has a tool that she calls habit stacking. And with habit stacking, you are taking a habit that you already have and adding something to it. So let's say for myself, I have my morning practice of my meditation. So that's where I can stack that habit on top of that, of tracking my spending for the day or tracking from the day before, or just putting it on top of something that we're already doing. So it is part of now my daily practice that I'm doing with my money is looking at it, looking at the spending, but I'm doing this before or after my mindfulness practice. So then I feel really grounded. I feel really ready to look at those numbers because I know and honor that sometimes that can be really hard. So just want to say that I see you when it comes to that stuff, when it comes to the tracking. But again, it's a tool we need to use, right? Like when it comes to money, a lot of times people are like, I have no idea how much I spend. I have no idea how much my expenses are. So that's where a spending plan is a tool for you, right? Having that spending plan and knowing how much income you make, what you pay out in expenses, and starting to really put like, how much am I going to spend on groceries this month? How much am I going to spend on eating out this month? And getting really specific. And then as well, tracking that spending. You can do that in a few different ways. I'm finding a lot of people are reverting back to spreadsheets. But there is a lot of great and amazing tools on that you can use, like apps or anything online that you can use to track your spending, because they can automatically just download transactions from your bank account if you feel comfortable doing that with the app, and privacy and all that. Some people don't like that, but some people love it. So it really depends. I myself, I do mine manually because I found that with the apps and everything, it got really convoluted, and the automatic downloads, it wasn't putting it into the categories that I liked. And I actually found that I was like fixing more of what the automatic downloads were doing as opposed to me actually tracking my spending. So now that I do it manually, it doesn't take as long of, sometimes the programs are really intuitive in like correcting it themselves. Sometimes they're not. Mint is one that's super easy to use, very intuitive to use. And then there's also You Need a Budget. That's one that I recommend to people. But also when it comes to any sort of tracking your spending, what I want to say is there is going to be time that you're going to have to put into getting that set up, because putting in your expenses, tracking the spending, getting your system set up is really, really important. But you're going to be using that with your tools, right? That's going to be in your toolbox. I know, I have my spending plan and I know how much I am spending, but really it's coming down to, yes, okay, I'm going to commit an hour to this weekend, an hour during the week to get everything set up. Just know that it does take some time to set it up, but don't let this be something that completely takes you away from doing it. Once you've put in and invested that time in getting it set up, it is so worth it. So yes, the spreadsheet apps, there's a lot of spreadsheets online. I'm working on one for Financial Sobriety School, for you to be able to download as well. It will be coming out soon. So keep your eye out for that. How are you handling your stress with money? What tools are you reaching for that? So that's where, when I had asked earlier, like, what is something that you can think of, a tool you can use for your money? And I thought of mindfulness. So that's where, as well, it's really, really important to how are you handling that stress? And most of the time, not well, right? You're like, nope, I am not handling that well, Linda. Like, you want to ask me, like, how I'm actually handling this stress? Not well. And so, I love I had done some work with the trauma of money last spring, and they taught me the window of regulation. So going from 1 to 10, are you like absolutely dissociated, like not even present, or are you hyper aroused, almost in a manic state? From 1 to 10, where are you? And how can you get to like the middle of like 4, 5, and 6? Right? How can you bring yourself to the middle? It could be putting on your favorite song and dancing your heart out and shaking and just like getting your energy moving. It could be anything like going on your spin bike, going for a walk. It could be mindfulness. It could be so many different things, even as simple as taking 3 deep breaths and repeating to yourself, I am safe. I am working on my money and I am safe, right? How are we dealing with that stress? And that the book Burnout I talk about, from Emily and Amelia Nagalski, is just there. Oh, me and my dyslexia. No, I can't even point to it. Yeah, that was a real, if you were watching this as opposed to on the podcast, I'm pointing in the complete wrong direction of where the book is because it's behind me. And then my dyslexia really kicked in. So that was fun. Yeah, Burnout is a book that I recommend to everyone. It's about completing the stress cycle. And when it comes to it with money, so much of that stuff is stuck in or so much of that stuff is stuck in our bodies. And we need to start to move that away, right? Move that away from our bodies. So, Burnout is a book that I recommend to absolutely anyone about completing that stress cycle. Having some money dates. I love this tool. And it's so, so important when it comes to spending time with yourself with your money, maybe having conversations with your spouse or your partner about money, having that conversation with yourself about money, and checking in, where, do I have a spending plan? If I don't, let's start to make one. What do I want to accomplish during this time that I'm spending with my money? What are some goals that I have? Where am I in regards to my spending plan on my groceries? Like, am I spending over? Am I starting to be in line? What does that look like? Do I need to make any adjustments? And even having it as, okay, where am I with my debt? Am I making the payments for my debt payback plan that I was really committed to? Am I putting money in my savings? What's the balance in there right now? And doing this with, so there's two ways that you can do this, because I know that having a money date is something that can feel hard at first. And really reminding yourself that I'm just gathering information. I'm just gathering information right now to be able to have my money meeting. And so some people like to keep it like black and white and kind of try to remove the emotion of it, and that works for some. But my favorite thing myself is getting like a cozy environment, like, even if you want to like do it in your pajamas in bed with your laptop or your computer or your phone, and just sort of like having a cozy, like some candles, have some slow music playing, doing something that makes it feel like kind of an occasion. And or going to your favorite coffee shop and get the coffee, logging into the Wi-Fi, and then being able to use that time and that space to have a money date with yourself. That actually sounds like a really cool idea now that I'm saying that out loud, and actually something that I might integrate into my own toolbox, is doing it that way. I love the idea of that. But yeah, what do money dates mean to you? What could they look like for you? And exploring that a little bit. The narratives and what's playing out in your head about money. What is it? What are you saying to yourself constantly about money that is making you start to go into a shame spiral? That is starting to feel like it just feels way too hard, right? And whose narrative is it actually? Is it even yours? Is it something that you heard your mom or dad say all the time growing up, or your grandparents or people close to you? Is it something that even belongs to you? Oh, I can't afford that. Oh, I'm never going to have money. Oh my God, I'm such a failure with my money. Is that actually something that you even believe? And you probably are believing it because it's that narrative that's playing and playing in our head. But what the tool is to like stopping that tape, stopping that narrative, and being able to catch it. And this takes time, because really, like, your brain is wired, and the science of it is that it's just good. The way it's wired is a lot of times, your default. And that narrative has probably been running in your head for your whole life, or since you were a kid. And it's just that constant energy and feeling about money overall. And how can you start to, catch that? And when you do, what else are you going to say to yourself? Instead of I'm a failure with money, I am working on my money. Instead of I'm never going to have money. If I continue to work on my financial sobriety, I will start to feel safe with my money. How can we start to turn it around on something that's really going to help support us with our money? And a lot of times, the narratives that we start to want to change it to aren't even things that we believe right now, but just an invitation to start to think about, all of those negative narratives and turning it into something positive. And, when we start to, have positive interactions with ourselves and the wording that we use, when it comes to it, like scientifically, all that negative stuff like lives within us, and we actually manually have to put positive things like within our hearts and our narratives and how we think about ourselves. Like, what is that design as a human, right? Like, why are so when it comes to us always, having a hard time with stuff and the way we're thinking and the ruminating and all of that, that's just how our body's wired. We have to manually bring in that positive stuff. That's a tool to use when it comes to changing that narrative with your money and really starting to, again, change the story, switch the script. What do you want to release? What do you want to call in? What does that look like? And then the last thing that I want to touch on is acceptance and forgiveness as a tool and celebrating. And those are each different ones, but kind of start to come together. So when it comes to acceptance, and a lot of times when it comes to our debt or something that's feeling really, really heavy, what's a way you can accept that's actually like what the situation is right now, and what's going to help you start to move forward with it. I accept that I did what I did because I needed to survive in that moment, and I used my credit card because it was a pandemic possibly, and I was putting things on there because I actually didn't have work for 3 months, and now I'm paying off that debt. Or maybe it was because that you are going through a divorce and the emotional gymnastics that you were doing with it led to emotional spending, right? Like really getting to the core of, yes, there is that debt, but why is it there? And starting to accept, like, yes, those are choices I've made, but these are choices I'm going to make now. And I think that's really, really important because the forgiveness piece of it also starts to come from, forgiving yourself, forgiving others, right? Like, and maybe even about that narratives piece that I was talking about earlier. That narrative of, I'm a failure at money. I'm never going to have money. And, whose narrative was that? And maybe you could hear someone and maybe forgiving them that that's the narrative that you've inherited from them. And, I know that that wasn't an easy thing for you who you're forgiving. And, even just writing it out in a journal. But what's really important about it is that forgiveness piece isn't about the other person. It's all about you. It's all about you knowing why you're forgiving that person and really starting to make that peace, because then you can start to move forward and start to release that. And sometimes there's things that you've experienced that aren't your fault, but it's your turn. It's your turn to change that, right? It's your turn to start to change that story. And forgiveness is a huge, huge piece of that. I forgive myself for what I needed to do to survive. What does that look like for you? And celebrating our money. If you have a money date, maybe one of the first things you can put on your agenda is, what did I do well with my money this week? What can I celebrate? Or even celebrating that you had the money in your account to be able to pay your rent or your mortgage payment or put gas into your car. Even things like that, that seem like everyday things that you're doing right now, offer some gratitude and celebrate. Like, I am so excited that I actually had that. And, really starting to appreciate things, because that's where the energy and the flow of financial sobriety really starts, is acknowledging, celebrating, and acknowledging ourselves. Even celebrating, and on the top of your list for celebrating could be that you watched or listened to this today, and just honoring that within yourself and celebrating, like, hey, saw this financial sobriety thing and wanted to see what that was all about. Celebrate that you were even curious. Celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. Those are some tools that I reach for a lot in my toolbox with my financial sobriety. And what are some other things that you can think of? Would love to hear what you think, what things came up for you during this lesson. I'm so excited that you may have some new tools now that you didn't have before. Thanks so much for being here today, and I will see you next week, where we're going to talk about another foundation of Financial Sobriety School. I'll see you there. Bye.